Aiden Cross was dying in this game 412 times. He knew every dange by heart, every boss, every trap, every dialogue of every NPC for all 5 continents. A full completions across 8 years, all 12 editions, all grades, all hidden quests. Forums called it Walking Wiki, and this wasn't a compliment. It was a diagnosis. When the server's Eternal Throne Online shut down 3 years ago, he was in front of the monitor and was watching at the screen fade away. The world in which he lived more than in reality just disappeared. 8 years turned into a line on the developer's website. Thank you for your time. The servers are forever. 3 years after that were empty. Work as a courier, 12 hours a day, boxes, addresses, tips of which almost didn't. He didn't complain. There too. My parents had given up. Friends stayed only in the game, and games more there anymore. Sometimes he opened old screenshots and flipped through like a photo album from another life. Here it stands before the throne of eternity. Here kills Archdemon Zaraxus in solo. Here finds a hidden dungeon on Island of Ash which no one has found. Dead pictures of a dead world. In that evening, everything changed because of the storm. He was at the computer and scrolling through of the client, not for something in particular, just a habit. The zipper struck the and the power came through the outlet into the unit and via the keyboard to his fingers. The pain was brief. The darkness was long. When he opened his he saw the grass. Not pixelated, real, green and damp with dew. He lay in a clearing, and above him was a sky he would recognize anywhere. 3 moons, 1 silver, 1 red, 1 black with a violet rim. The sky of eternal. He sat up and looked around. A clearing at the foot of a hill, a river to the right, a forest of blue trees to the left. Ahead, a stone pillar with a crack from which a faint golden glow emanated. Aiden knew this place. The source of the throne. In the game, it was just a prop. A pretty backdrop for screenshots and nothing more. You couldn't interact with it. You couldn't use it. Just a stone with a light. He stood up and felt that the body wasn't his. Lighter. Younger. He looked at his hands. The same hands but without the scars from the boxes and without the calluses from the bicycle handlebars. A system window appeared before his eyes. Semi-transparent, golden letters on a dark background. Stealth mode, City of God, build a city, survive the war of all. Time limit, 3 years, 1,095 days. Good luck. Aiden read it twice, then once more. In 100 playthroughs, he had never heard of such a mode. Not a single player had. Not on forums, not in guides, not in the data mine. He opened the stats. Level 1. No class. Inventory empty. Starting gear. Shirt, pants, boots. No weapons. He stood in a clearing in a world where the weakest mob could devour a level 1 character in 2 hits, and the system wanted him to build a city. He hadn't cleared a dungeon. He hadn't killed a boss. He'd built a city. Over 100 playthroughs, he'd destroyed everything in this world that could be destroyed. Every village, every castle, every fortress. He'd wiped out entire factions for experience, burned down forests for resources, killed NPCs who stood in his way. And now he was told to build. He laughed. The sound of his own voice scared him, not because it was foreign, but because it was too real. It wasn't headphones or speakers. It was air and vocal cords and a throat. He bit his finger. It hurt. He slapped his cheek. It hurt. He looked at the system window again. At the bottom, in small print, was what made him fall silent. No exit. 2 words. No logout button. No exit menu. He stood in a world that had been shut down 3 years ago, and the world was real, and there was no way out. The panic lasted a minute. Exactly a minute. Then his brain switched to the mode that had worked through all 100 playthroughs. Analysis. situation, resources, threats, objective. He knew this world better than any creature in it. He knew every resource in this clearing. He knew that 3 kilometers to the north lay the village of Oldcrest, with a population of about 60 people. He knew that in 10 days, the Blackhorn gang would pass along the old road. 30 bandits, levels 8 through 12, a level 15 leader. In the game, they burned Oldcrest and killed half the inhabitants. The quest only appeared afterward. You arrive at the ruins. You gather the survivors. You gain experience. 100 times he had come back afterward. 100 times he had seen the corpses and burning houses. Those were sprites, scripts, animation. Now he stood in a world where NPCs were alive and died forever. A system window confirmed this in a separate line. The town's residents have permanent death. Resurrection is impossible. So the 60 people in Oldcrest weren't just a set of polygons. They were people. And in 10 days, 30 bandits would come to kill them. Aiden looked at the source of the throne. The golden glow pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. He remembered that in the game, the source couldn't be activated. But here, the rules were different. He walked over and placed his hand on the stone. Warmth spread through his fingers and up his arm to his shoulder. The system window updated. Throne source activated. Radius of influence, 300 meters. Bonuses. Regeneration within the influence zone increased by 20%. Soil fertility increased by 30%. Detection of hostile creatures within a 1-kilometer radius. Source, level 1. Population is required to level up. He removed his hand. 300 meters. A small circle of land with a magic stone at its center. This was his city. For now, just a clearing. Aiden turned toward the forest. Blue trees, crystal oak. In the game, it was a common resource, sturdy wood for early crafting. He knew there was a fallen tree at the edge of the forest. No need for an axe. He could break off branches with his hands. He walked toward the forest and got to work. 3 hours later, he had a shelter. Crooked and pathetic. 4 branches stuck in the ground, a roof of leaves. No self-respecting gamer would call this a structure, but the system did. First structure erected. City progress, 1 of 100. He sat down at the entrance to the shelter and looked up at the sky. 3 moons drifted slowly. The wind rustled the grass. Somewhere in the forest a bird sang, one he remembered as sound file number 3047. Now it was just a bird. 1,095 days. 3 years. The war of all at the end. All factions at once. Demons. The Order of Light. The Pantheon of Gods. 4 NPC guilds. Everyone wants the source. Everyone will come to take it. And he has a hut. Aiden closed his eyes. A plan was already taking shape. Tomorrow, he would go to Oldcrest. Not as a player going on a quest. As a man who knows that in 10 days, bandits will come, and knows how to stop them. Morning began with pain. Every muscle ache from yesterday's work. In the game was a bar on the screen. Here, it were hands that didn't wanted to straighten. Aiden stood up and stretched. The body of the first level was weak. In previous runs to this point, he usually already 5th level and had a basic weapon. Now he was bare arms and knowledge. He set out toward north. The trail through the ran straight just as he remembered. Every turn, every stone, every kilometer he stopped by a tree with a trunk. In the under this tree was a brank with 3 potions of health. Trifle for high level, salvation for first. He raked the leaves. The hiding place was in place. 3 jars of red liquid. He put them in the equipment. Next, along the trail for half a kilometer, there another one hiding place. A dagger. An ordinary iron dagger. Damage 10 units. Trash for any who over 3rd level. For Aiden, write this the best weapon in the world. He tied a dagger to his and went on. Around noon he came out from the forest. Old Crest was in the valley between two hills. A wooden palisade, 20 houses, fields to the eastern wall, mill on the wall. He stopped and looked down. In the game it was the village, the wall where we first quest and went on. No one did lingered. No one did remember the names of the residents. Aiden knew them all. Every name, every story. Blacksmith Bran, the headman Olvin, herbalist Mira, hunter Kale. He went to the gate. 2 guards, young, leather armor, spears. In the game they were just props. Here they looked at him with suspicion. One stepped forward and asked who he and where he. Aiden called himself a companion from the south. He said that he was looking for a job. The guard looked at his clothes. Shirt and pants without a single patch. Not coat of arms nor guild insignia. Blank. They was overlooked. The village smelled of smoke and bread. The children were down the street. A woman was hanging laundry. An old man was sitting on porch and smoked his pipe. Aiden was walking down Main Street and I recognized. Every house, every sign. But the sounds were different. In the game there was one track through the village. Here the sounds were alive. Conversations, laughter, the sign of a hammer from the forge, the barking of a dog. He found the village head at the council. Olvin was a large man in his 50s with a gray beard and heavy hands. In the game, he gave a quest to kill rats in the basement, the first quest in the game. Aiden had completed it 100 times. Olvin looked at him and asked how he could help. Aiden said he was a traveler, that he was looking for a place to settle down, that he could work with his hands and his head. Olvin asked what skills he had. Aiden said he knew a little about construction and tactics. Olvin grunted. He said they needed builders because the eastern wall was rotting, but they had nothing to pay with. The harvest had been poor. Merchants weren't coming in. The road was dangerous. Aiden said he didn't need payment. He needed a roof over his head and food. Alvin agreed. He gave him a room in the house next to the stables, a small one, a cot, and a table. Aiden tossed his things in there and went out. He needed to check out the village, not as a player looking for quests, as a man who would be defending it in 8 days. He walked around the palisade in a circle. The north wall was sturdy. The west wall was average. The east wall was rotten, just as Olvin had said. The south wall faced the stream. There, the palisade stood on soft ground and was leaning. In the game, the bandits attacked through the eastern gate. A direct assault, a simple pattern. But here, the NPCs acted on their own. They could come in from the south, or from the east and south at the same time. Both directions needed to be reinforced. Aiden returned to Alvin and said he wanted to start with the eastern wall. Alvin gave him 3 workers, middle-aged men, strong but slow. They looked at Aiden skeptically. A stranger on his first day was giving orders, but Olvin told them to listen. They listened. Aiden worked with them all day. He knew which trees to cut down. Crystal oak from the southern forest was 3 times stronger than ordinary oak. In the game, it was just a resource with enhanced stats. Here, it was knowledge that surprised the workers. One asked how he knew about the blue trees. Aiden said he'd read about it in a book. The worker shrugged. By evening, they had replaced 3 sections of the eastern wall. The new logs stood straight and sturdy. Aiden returned to his room and lay down. His body ached even more than it had that morning, but his mind was working. 8 days, 30 bandits, 12 men in the village capable of handling weapons, 2 guards, an untrained militia, an arsenal of 4 spears and 6 axes. Even with the new wall, a head-on battle meant casualties, heavy casualties. He needed a different tactic. He closed his eyes and began to recall. On his 37th playthrough, he'd stumbled upon the Black Horn route. The bandits were taking the old trail through Serpentine Gorge, a narrow passage, high walls, perfect for an ambush. In the game, he'd used it to farm experience. He'd go into the gorge, set traps, kill the bandits one by one. He leveled up. 100 times the bandits had taken the same route. Here, they could have gone another way. But the Serpentine Gorge was the only passage through the rocks in this area. The only way around was through the swamps, and that would add 2 extra days to the journey. The bandits wouldn't waste time taking a detour for the sake of a small village. They would go through the gorge. 80% probability. Aiden made his decision. In the morning, he would head to the gorge. He spent his second day in the village working on the walls. He worked quickly. He knew which joints held better, what angle of the palisade slowed an assault. The workers no longer watched with skepticism. The stranger knew what he was doing. By evening, the eastern wall was ready. Aiden asked Alvin for permission to scout the surroundings. He said he'd seen tracks on the trail. Maybe animals, maybe something worse. Alvin frowned. He asked what kind of tracks. Aiden described the tracks left by the Blackhorn bandits. Studded boots, a distinctive pattern. He knew it by heart from the game's guidebook. Alvin turned pale. He said he'd heard of the Blackhorn. The neighboring village of Brynmore had been burned down 6 months ago. No one had survived. Aiden said they needed to prepare. Alvin asked how. They didn't stand a chance against 30 bandits. Aiden said they did have a chance if they chose the right battle site. Alvin was silent for a long time. Then he said he'd listen. On the 3rd day, Aiden set off for Serpentine Gorge. A 2-hour walk to the east. The gorge was just like in the game, a narrow passage about 8 meters wide, walls 30 meters high, about 200 meters long, a perfect funnel. He walked through the gorge twice, found ledges on the walls, rocks that could be loosened, places for pits. He counted his steps and memorized every meter. A plan was taking shape. Pits with stakes at the entrance, rocks on ropes on the walls, narrowing the passage with logs. Not to kill 30 bandits, to slow them down, to scare them, to make them think they were expected. Bandits aren't an army. They won't storm a fortified position if they can find an easier target. But if they've already decided to attack Oldcrest, they'll only retreat if they suffer serious losses. So we need to inflict casualties in the gorge, 5 or 6 bandits. Then the leader will think twice. Aiden returned to the village and began setting traps. He knew the designs from the game. A pit 2 meters deep, stakes at the bottom, branches and leaves on top. It would take 3 men 1 day to build. A rope snare with stones, simple but effective. He asked Olvin for 5 men for 3 days. Olvin gave him 4. The 5th was needed in the fields. That would be enough. 4th day, Serpentine. Aiden stood on knee in pit and dug. My hands were covered calluses. My back didn't straighten. 4 men from the village were side by side, in silence. They didn't ask questions after that as Aiden showed them traces on the road. Real traces. Scouts of the Black Horn passed through 2-2 ago. Aiden knew that they would pass because that in the game, reconnaissance appeared in the 7th day. Here, it appeared on 2nd, previously than he expected. The world was not to script. The first pit was ready by noon. 2 meters deep, 1.5 meters wide, 6 sharp stakes for bottom. On top, frame made thin twigs sprinkled with jode and leaves. Aiden checked his camouflage. He stood in 10 steps and I took a look. It visible, okay. Dig hole was dug to the right, the 3rd at exit from the gorge. Between them, Aiden stretched ropes at his ankles. To the ropes, I tied bags with stones hanging on the walls. Pull the rope, and 5 kilograms rocks are flying toward head. Not fatal for the 12th level, but it is enough to stun a couple seconds. On walls of the aid he found 3 boulders that were in clay. In the game he once brought down them for achievement. Here, he undermined them even further. 1 rope from each boulder led to the 8 of the wall. Pull in right moment, and the stone flies down. Every boulder weighed about 200 kilograms. That is to kill or maim even a gangster of a high level. But you have to hit exactly. Hunter Kale came to 5th day. Aiden didn't ask for it. Kale found out from the staff and came. Tall, thin, quiet. In the game, he gave a quest for A for wolves. A simple quest for the 3rd level. Here, it stood at edge of the 8 and surveyed the traps. Then looked at Aiden and said that it good job. He said that he had been in these rocks 20 years and knows that this is a throat. Who holds throat decides whoever will pass. Aiden asked, can he shoot with A from above? Kale smiled. He said that he might get into a rabbit from 30 meters on the run. Aiden said that the rabbits don't shoot it back. Kale said that the gangsters too get from the bottom up on 30 meters. He was right. Position on the wall of the 8 provided a huge advantage. Aiden set Kale in the wall. He take him 20 arrows, no then left. Each arrow must hit the target. The 6th day brought a problem. One of employees came in the morning and said that No would dig. He said that Alvin is listen a stranger. That kind of gangsters will come. That scares people for his importance. Aiden looked at him. The man was Grant. In the game with 8, he had a name. He NPC number 4 in Oldcrest. Here at J had evil eyes and fear for behind them. He was afraid. And the fear turned into anger toward the one who made to be afraid. Aiden didn't argue. He said that Grant can return to village. Thank you. Thank for help. Grant left. 3 remained. The work slowed down but did not stop. By the evening the 6th day the traps were ready. 3 holes, 5 traps, 3 boulders, position for Archer. Aiden stood at the entrance to the J and looked at my work. In the 12th, he would simply set traps through the crafting menu. 2 clicks, 3 seconds. Here he spent 3 days of hard manual labor, and all still, it could not work out. The bandits could have gone through the marshes, could send a reconnaissance that find the traps. They could be stronger than he remembered. Secret mode changed the rules. He knew the timing and routes, but could be sure that they were. That was like playing chess, knowing all your opponent's moves but not knowing if he even plays chess. On the 7th day, Aiden returned to the village and gathered all the men. 12 men, 2 guards, 10 peasants with axes. He stood before them and explained the situation. The Blackhorn bandits are heading for Oldcrest, 30 fighters. They'll be here in 3 days, maybe 2. Half the men turned pale. The other half didn't believe it. Grant said it was a lie. Aiden pulled out the item he'd picked up on the road that morning, a patch with a black horn on a red background, torn from a jacket. Fresh. Blackhorn's scouts had passed very close by. Grant fell silent. Alvin asked what to do. Aiden explained the plan. Traps in the gorge would slow the bandits down and inflict casualties. Kale would fire from above, but some of the bandits would make it through the gorge. Those who made it through would be angry and wounded. The village must be ready. He divided the men into 3 groups, 4 on the eastern wall, 4 on the southern wall, 4 in reserve behind the council house. Guards at the gates. He gave each group a simple instruction. Do not go beyond the wall. Fire from above. If the bandits break through the gates, retreat to the square and hold the perimeter around the well. Women and children in the basement of the council house. Alvin listened in silence. Then he asked how Aiden knew how to fight. Aiden said he had fought before, far from here. It was true. He had fought in this world 100 times, just on the other side. The 8th day, the last day of preparation. Aiden checked the walls. He checked the traps. He walked through the gorge once more. Everything was in place. Kale sat at his post, sharpening arrowheads. The village was still. Even the children weren't running about. Everyone was waiting. In the evening, Aiden sat alone by the fire. Ulvin approached and sat down beside him. He was silent for a long time. Then he said that if the stranger was wrong, they would laugh at him tomorrow and drive him away. And if he was right, one of them would die tomorrow. Aiden said he would do everything to make sure no one died. Olvin looked at him for a long time. He said he believed him, not because he knew him, but because his eyes weren't those of a coward. And he left. Aiden stayed by the fire. He thought about how many times he'd seen Old Crest burning, how bodies lay in the streets, how guards with spears lay at the gates because 30 bandits were too many for 2 guys in leather armor. 100 times he came back afterward, gathered the survivors, earned experience points, moved on. Not once did he arrive in time. Not once did he try to prevent it, because it was a game. Now it was the real world. The 9th day, morning. Kale whistled from a tree by the road. 3 short whistles, a signal. They're coming. Aiden stood up. His heart was racing. He ran toward the gorge. He took up a position at the top near the ropes tied to the boulders. He waited. An hour later he heard them. Footsteps, the clang of metal, voices, rough laughter. They were marching in a column of 3, not expecting any resistance. Why would they? A small village, no guards on the road, easy pickings. The first 3 entered the ravine, 3 more behind them. More. Aiden counted. 10, 15, 20. He waited until the middle of the column entered the trap zone. 25. The first bandit stepped into a pit. He fell through with a scream. The stakes did their job. The scream cut off. The second stumbled over a tripwire. A sack of stones struck him in the temple. He fell. The column stopped. A stampede began. Aiden yanked the first rope. 200 kilograms of rock crashed down. It hit 2 of them. Kale started shooting. The first arrow in the neck. The second in the shoulder. The third in the leg. He didn't miss. The bandits screamed. They ran forward, into the next pit. Another scream. Aiden pulled the second rope. The rock fell. Missed. Damn it. Third rope. Hit. The gorge descended into chaos. The bandits darted between the walls. Some ran backward, others forward. Kale kept shooting. 12 arrows, 13, 14. Every one found its mark. 10 minutes later, it was over. Not a fight, a rout. The bandits turned and ran back. 8 bodies remained on the gorge floor. 6 wounded limped behind the column. The leader stood at the gorge entrance, yelling at his men. Aiden saw him from above. Level 15, heavy armor, 2-handed axe. In the game, he was a mini-boss. The leader looked up, straight at Aiden. Their eyes met. The leader spat, turned around, led the rest away. 22 bandits left. 8 remained in the gorge forever. Kale climbed down to Aiden. His hands were shaking. His face was pale. He said he'd never shot people before. Aiden said he'd done everything right. Kale said that right didn't mean easy. They returned to the village. Olvin met them at the gate. He looked at Aiden. He looked at Kale. He asked one word. Alive. Aiden nodded. He said the bandits were gone. The village was still standing. Olvin hugged Kale. Then he turned to Aiden. He didn't hug him, but he bowed. Deeply. Aiden didn't know what to make of a bow from an NPC, from a person. He just nodded and went to his room. He sat down on his bunk. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from realization. 8 people had died in the gorge. In the game, they were experience points. Here, they were bodies, with faces and voices. A system window flashed. Experience gained. Level raised to 3. Skill acquired. Trap tactics. Rank, beginner. Aiden closed the window. He didn't want to look. After the battle in the Old Crest changed, people looked at Aiden differently. Not as a stranger, like a person who saved them homes. Grant, who refused to dig holes, brought him a bowl of stiff in the evening. Nothing said. He just put it and left. Aiden ate it. The kale was lousy, but it was the first thing he was voluntarily in this world. On 10th day, the refugees, 7 families from Bryn Mawr, that one was burned 6 months ago. They wandered through the woods, hungry, sick, children in rags. Alvin wanted to send them further. The village is small, the houses right next to each other, extra mouths. Aiden stopped him. He said that he needed people, for the kale in the south. Alvin asked which project. Aiden said that that is building a settlement at the source of Tron, 3 kilometers from here. Good land, water, safety. Alvin looked at him for a long time. He said that source of the Thron is a sacred place. No one there lives. Aiden said that now will be. He took the refugees to south, 23 people, men, women, children. They walked in silence. They were to be silent. When they went into the clearing by the spring and saw a golden glow, some stood up on their news. For them, it was a miracle. For Aiden, it was a resource with a radius of 300 meters. It showed them the hut. He said that this is the beginning. The men exchanged glances. They looked pitiful. But the clearing was nice. The grass was thick. The river nearby. The forest is close by. And golden glow warmed like a second sun. By the 20th day at the day, their 5 houses. Simple, log houses, but sturdy. Crystal oak held better than wood. Aiden designed every house. He knew from the layout what layout gives a deck to strength. I knew how to lay a foundation so that the system counts the building as part of the city. System window was updated. The population 23, buildings 7. Settlement of the settlement 1. Up, the second level requires 50 residents and 20 buildings. He had had more people. He 5 day of Old Crest arrived 17. 17 people. Those who wanted a new life. Those who felt cramped. The young. 40 residents. Olvin didn't come, but sent a loaded grain. A silent blessing. On 30th day, Aiden began build a wall. Not palisade, a stone wall. In the game, stone wall was available from the 20th level of the settlement. Here was anything such restriction. There were, just their hands in stone. The stone came from the hills to the east. Granite, heavy but sturdy. 10 men quarried the stone. 10 hauled it on carts. 20 laid it. Aiden was in charge. He knew the principles of masonry from a construction guide he'd written himself for the forum. The wall grew slowly, a meter a day, but it grew. By the 30th day, the first section was ready. 20 meters long, 2 meters high, half a meter thick. Not a fortress, but no longer a village. It was on the very 30th day that Thorn Valhorn arrived. Aiden was waiting for him. In the game, Thorn appeared in 3 locations. A wandering blacksmith, a minor NPC. He gave a quest to find rare ore. The reward was mediocre. 90% of players walked right past him. Aiden walked past him 99 times out of 100. On the 100th try, he completed the quest, and discovered that Thorn had a hidden dialogue branch. If you give him a specific item, he reveals his story. A former royal blacksmith, banished for refusing to forge weapons for an unjust war. He wandered for 20 years, lost his family, lost his workshop. All he kept were his hands and his knowledge of metal. In the game, the hidden dialogue branch didn't give anything, just lore, text. Here, Thorn stood at the settlement's gate and watched the construction. A large man, 45 years old, hands like a bear's, an apron scorched in 10 places, a hammer on his belt, an ordinary hammer, a workman's hammer. Aiden approached him. Thorn asked what kind of place this was. Aiden said it was a city, small for now, but it would grow. Thorn snorted, said he'd seen many cities. They all promised to grow. Most of them burned down. Aiden said this one wouldn't burn down. Thorn asked why. Aiden said because he needed a blacksmith, a good blacksmith, the best he knew. Thorn looked at him suspiciously. He asked how he knew Thorn was a good blacksmith. They'd never met. Aiden knew the next words would decide everything. There was an item in the game that would win Thorn's trust: the Star Anvil, a blueprint for an anvil made of meteorite metal. Thorn had dreamed of it his whole life. In the game, the blueprint lay in a hidden cache on Ash Island, thousands of miles from here. Aiden couldn't get there, but he knew the blueprint by heart. 100 playthroughs. He'd seen it on the screen dozens of times, every line, every dimension, every symbol. He picked up a stick and began drawing on the ground, the anvil's lines, the proportions, the grooves for slag drainage, the mounting slots, the enhancement runes on the side edges. Thorn watched, first with curiosity, then with surprise. Then he silently knelt down beside him and stared at the drawing without looking away. He said it was the Star Anvil. Said he'd seen that drawing once in his life, in a library that burned down 20 years ago. He asked how Aiden knew. Aiden said he had a good memory. Thorn said that wasn't an answer. Aiden said it was the only answer he had. Thorn was silent. He looked at the drawing. Then he stood up. He took the hammer from his belt. He placed it in front of Aiden. He said that if Aiden built him a smithy and got the materials for an anvil, then Thorn would stay, for as long as it took. Aiden picked up the hammer and handed it back. He said the hammer was needed more in a blacksmith's hands. They began building the smithy the next day. Aiden knew the layout. He knew where to place the forge, how tall the chimney should be, where to store the raw materials. Thorn worked alongside him and increasingly fell silent mid-sentence when Aiden anticipated his next move. By the 35th day, the smithy was ready. The first real building in the city, not a residential house, an industrial building. The system window noted it. The smithy is built. Production is available. The blacksmith's rank determines the maximum equipment level. Thorn started working that very day. The first order, 20 spearheads, for the militia. They were ready in a week. The quality was excellent. Thorn wasn't a minor NPC. He was a master. He'd just never been given a workshop. By the 40th day, the population had reached 50. People came on their own. Word of the settlement at the source of the throne had spread to the surrounding villages. A place with a wall. A place with a blacksmith. Where a stranger saved Old Crest from bandits. The system window updated. Population 50. Settlement level 2. New options. Market. Barracks. Infirmary. The source's radius of influence increased to 500 meters. Aiden stood on the wall and looked at his city. 50 people. 20 buildings. The stone wall around the perimeter isn't closed yet. The smithy is smoking. Children are running around. A woman is baking bread. Men are chopping stone. He remembered the first day. A hut. A clearing. The system window with text about the war of all. That was the 30th day. A month had passed. 1,065 days remained. And somewhere far to the south, Archdemon Xeraxis was gathering his horde. Day 187 was marked in red in Aiden's memory. 5 months. In 5 months, the demons would come. And 20 spears from Thorn would not be enough. An army is needed. A general is needed. Aiden knew where to find him. General Darian Cade, 52 years old, the best tactician on the continent, currently imprisoned in the capital of Valgard, sentenced to death for heresy, execution in 90 days. On the 90th day of this world, Aiden began to plan. The path to Valgard took 10 days on foot. Aiden had had 10 days. The city grew but remained fragile. Every day without him is day without direction. People worked but didn't know why. They were the wall thicker than any another castle. It left Tornin in charge. The blacksmith was pleased. He said that he blacksmith, but not a village headman. Aiden said that the head is the one to people trust. Thorn has worked in the city 10 days and already knew every bye-bye. That was more than Aiden. Thorn agreed, with grumbling. Aiden went out at 8 at 5th day. He walked quickly. Level 3rd made a little more stamina than the first one. dagger on belt, 3 potions of Aiden in the bag, map of Aiden in my head. He knew every turn of the road, every inn, every dangerous section. On second day of the journey, he cut through the forest, shady Loschina. In this it was people's zone for the Jimcree of the Aiden and 10th levels. Wolves, bears, forest trolls. Aiden was 3rd level, but he knew the patrol. He knew that the wolves sleep from noon until 3. What? Trolls don't go further 500 meters from their tunnels. What? Do avoid certain trees because that under them grows a mushroom that they do tolerate. It walked the forest in 6 hours without encountering a single creature. Cut 2 days of the journey. On 4th day he reached to Valgard. The capital occupied the entire valley. White walls, 3 rings of fortifications, towers with flags. In this was the hub. The width, an auction and bank and guild halls. Thousands players crowded in the squares. Now players there. Their people. Thousands people. The markets buzz. Guards patrolled the streets in shiny steel. Vendors shouted out their prices. Beggars held out their hands. The city lived its own. Aiden walked through the main gate. That didn't stop. He looked like a vagrant. Tramps were and came every day. No one was interested. He needed information. Information. In the Valgard. Valgarda was in the northeastern sector. Under the barracks, the guards. Underground level, 30 cells. Security. 12 people during the day, 8 at night, shift every 6 hours. He knew this because that in the 22nd passage I a quest on escape prisoner. Another prisoner, not Darian. Darian Cade in the game was Lorem. Note in library, mention in dialogue. The great general executed for heresy. No one could save. Because the quest did existed here. Quests, there, at all. They're only decisions and consequences. Aiden spent 2 days in Valgard. He observed. He counted the guards. He studied the patrol routes. He found a tavern near the barracks where the guards drank after their shift. He listened to their conversations. On the 2nd evening, he heard what he was looking for. 2 guards were discussing the general. One said the execution was scheduled for the 3rd day of autumn. It was the 89th day by Aiden's count, not the 90th, a day earlier. Once again, the world was playing by its own rules. The other guard said he felt sorry for the old man, that Darian had been the best general in the last 50 years, that he'd been accused of heresy only because he'd refused to lead the army against the peaceful elves in the north. The king had ordered it. Darian had refused. The king had declared him a heretic, a convenient accusation. Aiden listened and thought. In the game, this story was a couple of lines of text. Here, real people stood behind it. A general who chose conscience over the crown. A king who chose power over honor. Guards who thought the execution was unjust, but kept quiet because they had families. He made a plan. The prison was underground. 1 entrance, 1 exit. A direct assault was impossible. He was level 3 against 12 guards ranging from levels 10 to 15. Even with his knowledge of their patterns, it was suicide. He needed another way. In the 22nd playthrough, the prisoner's escape had gone through the sewers, an old tunnel from the prison to the river. In the game, it was open. Here, it could be blocked, or barred, or guarded. Aiden found the tunnel's exit by the river at night. A rusty grate, an old lock, no guards. Apparently, no one knew or remembered this exit. He examined the lock, a simple mechanism. He could pick it with a dagger in a minute. He went inside. The tunnel was damp and dark. It smelled of mold and something worse. Rats rustled against the walls. In the game, there were mobs here. Mutant rats, level 2. Here, there were ordinary rats. They scurried away from his footsteps. He walked by memory. Turn left. Go straight for 50 meters. Turn right. Down the steps. Left again. 20 minutes later, he hit a wall. The tunnel was blocked. A collapse. Rocks and mud had completely blocked the passage. That wasn't in the game. Aiden stood in the darkness and thought. Plan A had failed. He needed a plan B. He went back to the exit. He sat by the river and looked at the moons. 3 moons were reflected in the water. A beautiful world, even when it was trying to kill you. Plan B came an hour later. Not from his knowledge of the game, from observing the guards. 2 men in the tavern felt sorry for Darien. Not all the guards were loyal to the king. Some were loyal to the general, who had led them into battle for 20 years, who had never retreated, who refused to kill civilians. He needed one guard, one who was willing to open the door, not for money, for his conscience. He began to search. He went from tavern to tavern near the barracks. He listened. He watched. On the 3rd day, he found him. Guard Rolf. Not young, his face scarred. He was drinking alone. A lot. Aiden sat down next to him. He said nothing. He drank water. Rolf looked at him askance. He asked what he wanted. Aiden said nothing. He'd just come for a drink. Rolf turned away. Aiden waited. Then he said quietly that he knew a man who could use a good general. Rolf froze. He didn't turn around. He didn't answer. But he froze. Aiden said that in 2 days, Darien Cade would die, and that the world would lose the best tactician on the continent because some coward on the throne was afraid of the truth. Rolf turned around. His eyes were red. From drinking, from insomnia, from something else. He said that Aiden didn't know what he was talking about. Aiden said he did. That Darien had refused to lead an army against the peaceful elves. That he had been called a heretic. That the guards who had served under him considered it unjust, but remained silent. Rolf was silent for a long time. Then he asked who he was. Aiden said he was building a city. A small one, far from here. A city that needed a general. A real one. Not a royal lapdog, but a man with principles. Rolf said it was madness. That the prison was heavily guarded. That helping someone escape meant execution without trial. Aiden said he knew. He asked if Rolf had served under Darien's command. Rolf nodded. 3 campaigns. The northern border. Mountain passes. The coast. Darien never once abandoned the wounded. Never once gave an order he wouldn't carry out himself. When Rolf got the scar on his face, it was Darien who carried him out of the battle. Aiden was silent. He waited. Rolf finished his mug. He stood up. He said that in 2 days he'd be on the night shift, the prison entrance, from midnight to 6. At 4 in the morning, he'll go out to relieve himself. The door will be unlocked for exactly 10 minutes. What happens after that isn't his concern. And he left. Aiden sat alone. 10 minutes. An open door. 12 guards inside, not counting Rolf. 11. 30 cells. He doesn't know which cell Darien is in. He doesn't know the prison layout because the escape quest went through the sewers, and he's only seen the prison from the outside. 11 guards. Levels 10 through 15. He's a level 3 with a dagger. This isn't a plan. It's a prayer. But in 2 days, Darien will die, and there won't be another chance. Aiden stood up and went to get ready. He bought a rope at the market, a sack of flour, a flask of oil, flint, 3 rags. Not weapons. Tools. The tools of a man who has played the game 100 times and knows that direct combat isn't the only way to win. Night, the night of the day. 4 o'clock before dawn. Aiden stood in shadow of the wall opposite the entrance to prison and rate the beats, heartbeats. 1, 20 per minute. Too fast. He forced breathe more slowly. In the did, heartbeat, heartbeat. They're only streaks of health and mana. Here was a body that was from the cold and fear. The entrance to prison was a heavy oak door in stone wall of the barracks. 2 torches on sides, 1 guard on the outside. Rolf. He stood leaning on spear and into darkness, without expression. Exactly into 4, Rolf put spear against the wall. He stretched. He walked to the corner, slowly, like a person to whom doesn't about to worry about. The door remained left ajar, the crack in palm. Aiden moved, quickly but without running. Running draws attention. Walking, step, step, a shadow to shadow. He squeezed through door and found himself in corridor. Stone walls, torches every 10 meters, the smell of dampness and iron. The staircase down. He walked down memory which it existed. Prison he had only from the outside. Inside had to improvise. But the logic of the underground structures in Eternal Throne was standard. Central lane, cells on sides, guard room in the middle. He went to one flight. The hallway, doors to the cells on the left and right. Iron, with small windows. Quiet. Snoring from the guard up ahead. Night shift. 8 guards, minus Rolf. 7. How many are sleeping? How many are awake? He didn't know. The first part of the plan he prepared during the day. A sack of flour with a rag soaked with oil. The simplest smoke bomb. Not from the game, from common sense. The torment in the air plus fire equals flash and thick smoke. Not fatal. But at 30 seconds, visibility is 0. He crept to the door of the guardhouse. It was slightly ajar. Inside is a table. 3 guards. 2 are sleeping on benches. 1 is sitting and cleans his with a knife. The others somewhere in prison. They patrol or asleep in cells for security. Aiden took out a flint. He struck a spark onto a rag. She began slowly. He waited 3 seconds. He hid the bag into guardhouse. They exploded in a cloud. The flash lit up the room white. Smoke rolled thick and bitter. The guards shouted. 1 knocked over the table. Another crashed into the wall. The 3rd was swearing and coughed. Aiden didn't wait. He ran down corridor. Cameras, small windows. He peered into each one. Empty. Empty. A sleeping prisoner. Empty. A woman curled up in corner. Empty. Time was running out. Guards in the guardhouse came to their senses. Voices grew louder. Someone shouted the alarm. The next camera. Empty. Next. Aiden peeked and stopped. The old man was sitting on stone bench, his back, hands on knees, eyes open. He wasn't asleep. He was at the door as if he was waiting. Gray hair cut short, face with scars, thin but muscular. Even in prison clothing in there's something of a commander. The men who led the armies did this, even in the cell. Aiden pulled the bolt, heavy, rusty. It gave way. He twitched with both hands. The bolt shifted with a screech. The door opened. Darian Cade didn't stand up. He looked at Aiden from below up. I asked calmly who he and why came. Aiden said that he a friend. What came to take him? That was them little time. Darian didn't move. He said that 20 years of I've not trust people who come at night and call themselves friends. From the guardhouse came footsteps. They were running. Aiden said that in 6 hours they will have beheaded in the square for that he refused to kill civilians. He said that he has a city that through 100 days will be by demons. He said that he needed a general and not a dead man. Darian looked at him. Something had in eyes. No trust, interest. He stood up, slowly. His knees crunched. 2 months in a cell had go in vain, but he got and took toward the door. The hallway. Footsteps were getting closer. 2 guards were running from the depths of the prison. Torches on the walls swayed in draft. Aiden pulled Darian to the left, into a side passage. Dark, narrow. In the game, passages like this led to service areas, storage rooms, laundry. He was right. The door at the end of the passage led to a room full of bales of dirty laundry. A small window near the ceiling, barred, but the bars were rusty, like everything else in this prison. Aiden stood on the bundles. He tugged at the bars. 1 bar snapped, a second bent. The third gave way. The hole was small, big enough for Aiden, barely big enough for Darian. The old general squeezed through with difficulty. His shirt tore. He scraped his skin on a rock, but he made it through. They found themselves in an alley behind the barracks. Dark, quiet, for now. Aiden knew the alarm would go off in a matter of minutes. They had to get out of the city before the gates closed. The main gates closed at night, but the small western gate by the fish market stayed open until 5 in the morning, for the fishermen who went out onto the river before dawn. He knew this from his 53rd playthrough. A smuggling quest, a minor quest. No one remembered it. He remembered. They walked quickly. Darian was limping, his right leg. An old wound or a prison injury. Aiden didn't ask. Alleyways, shadows. A dog barked. They froze. The dog fell silent. Onward. The fish market. The smell of fish and salt. Empty stalls, wet stones. A small gate. Open. One guard, dozing on a stool. They walked past. The guard didn't stir. Beyond the gate, a road along the river. Darkness. Freedom. They walked in silence for 2 hours, until Valgard disappeared behind the hills. Then Darian stopped, sat down on a rock, looked up at the sky. 3 moons were setting below the horizon. Dawn was breaking in the east. He said he had commanded armies for 20 years, that his enemies feared him and his soldiers respected him, that he had never run away. And now he was fleeing his own country with a boy he didn't know. Aiden said he wasn't a boy. He was 24. Darian looked at him. He almost smiled. He asked how Aiden had found out the date of the execution. Aiden said he had his sources. Darian asked how he had found out about the elves, about the reason for the arrest. Aiden said it was a long story. Darian said they had a long road ahead of them. Aiden said he'd tell him. Later, when they reached the city. Right now they had to keep going. The guards would notice and send a pursuit. Darian stood up. His leg hurt, but he walked. No complaints, no questions. 20 years in the army had taught him to keep walking when his body wanted to lie down. The return journey took 5 days. It was faster because Aiden knew the shortcuts, and because every hour of delay could mean mounted pursuers on the road. They walked through the forests. They bypassed the villages. They ate berries and roots that Aiden found from memory. Darian watched as he unerringly found water, unerringly avoided animal trails, unerringly chose a place to spend the night that was sheltered from the wind and hidden from view. On the 3rd day of the journey, Darian said that Aiden moved through the forest like a man who had walked here 1,000 times. Aiden said he had a good memory for the terrain. Darian said that wasn't memory. Memory is when you remember roughly. Aiden knew exactly, every stone, every turn, as if the world were an open book to him. Aiden didn't answer. They arrived on the 93rd day. The city had changed during Aiden's absence. Thorn hadn't just kept everything afloat, he had improved it. The wall had grown 1/2 meter taller. A second smithy had appeared, a small one. For the apprentice Thorn had taken from among the refugees. The market was up and running. 3 merchants from neighboring villages had come to sell grain and cloth. The population had grown to 60. Thorn met them at the gate. He looked at Darian. He looked at Aiden. He asked who he had brought. Aiden said he had brought a general. Thorn asked which general. Darian stood up straight. Even after 5 days in the forest without proper food, even with a lame leg. He stood up straight, and there was something about him that made people fall silent. He gave his name. Thorn recognized him. Everyone in this part of the continent knew the name Darian Keed. Thorn said he'd been executed, hadn't he? Darian said they hadn't had time. Thorn looked at Aiden. He shook his head. He didn't say anything, but you could see in his eyes that he had even more questions. Aiden showed Darian the city, the walls, the forge, the houses, the throne spring, the fields. He explained the situation. Demons in 94 days, Xeraxis's horde, thousands of demons. After them, the Order of Light, then the guilds, then the gods. The final war in 1,002 days. Darian listened in silence. His expression didn't change. 20 years of command had taught him not to show emotion when delivering bad news. When Aiden finished, Darian asked how many fighters there were. Aiden said 18 men capable of wielding a weapon. Of those, 2 know how. The rest are peasants. Darian asked what equipment they had. Aiden said 20 spears, 10 shields, 5 bows, no armor except leather jackets. Darian was silent for a moment. Then he said that in 20 years he had turned peasants into soldiers 6 times, that it was possible, but it would take time. 3 months at least, so they wouldn't run at the sight of the enemy. 6 to keep them in formation. Aiden said they had 3 months, exactly. Darian nodded. He said he would start tomorrow. He turned and walked toward the barracks that didn't exist yet. He stopped. He turned back. He said they needed the barracks first. Aiden nodded. They began building the barracks the next day. Darian began with that by built people in a line at 90-day day. 18 men. Gloomy. Sleepy. Some angry because that they were torn from the construction site. Darian walked along the line in silence. He looked everyone. He stopped in front of the guy in 20 with broad and a blunt face. He asked how his name. The guy said that his name is Kellen. Darian asked held if Kellen a spear. Kellen said that he was holding a pitchfork. Darian said that the pitchfork is 2 spears placed side by side, so he a head start. Then turned to Aiden and said that at 18 people out, 10 have a chance to become soldiers. Of 4, a chance to become good soldiers. At Kellen, a chance to become a sergeant. The remaining 8 will be in archers. Not because that weak, but that the body does that type for close combat. Training began in that same day. Darian was ruthless, not cruel, ruthless. The difference is that his cruelty is senseless, and ruthlessness, Darian had a purpose. Every exercise, every shout, every rep. They ran around the walls, did push-ups in the mud. We poked spears into sacks filled straw until my hands didn't go numb. 3 times a day. At dawn until sunset. Until the 100th day 4 of 18 came to Aiden and said that could anymore. That Darian is, that they builders, or not soldiers. Aiden listened. Then he asked if they to see what is to the villages the horde. They said no. Aiden said that he doesn't wants to. They returned to training. Meanwhile, Darian was building an army. Aiden was building a city. 1/10th day. The population 120. Stone wall closed around the perimeter. 2 gates, the northern and southern. Tower at every gate. Inside the walls, 3 streets. The Torn, Market, Pharmacy, which was run herbalist Mira, who had moved from Old Crest. Stable, warehouse, barracks, Temple of the Spring. The last was a surprise. The residents built it themselves, without orders. A small stone building around the throne. They came there to pray. The golden glow gave them peace. For them, it was a sacred place. For Aiden, it was a building that boosted morale by 15% within a radius of influence. He caught in this thought and stopped. People built a temple because that they, not because that he gave the order. Not for the interest, for faith. He stood before the temple, and for the first time in 100 days, felt that this world is then a system with numbers. 1/20th day. Serena Nightwind came at night. How expected for a scout. Aiden was her. In the game, Serena appeared in 3 locations. Silver Leaves, Ruins of Eldrat, Crossroads, 3 roads. 90% of the players passed by because that it had BB through a dialogue. Not with her. With tree. A specific tree in the ones of leaves. Elven ritual. Words of an language. Aiden knew the words because that in 61st passage he found a scroll with a transcription, in a hiding place which himself had described in the guide on the forum. The words were a greeting on the forest. Who spoke them proved that he knew elvish culture. Serena had only before who knew. To the 15th day Aiden left into the first of leaves. 2 days on the road to west, found a tree, an old silver ash with runes on the bark. He spoke the words. He waited. An hour, 2, 3. For 4 o'clock the hand stuck into ground in a step from his feet. He didn't move. The voice from the branches asked where the man knows the words of greeting. Aiden said that he from a friend. The voice said that friends among people in the quiz. Aiden said that he wants be first. Silence. Then Serena went from tree. Tall, slender, green eyes, hair the color silver. 2 daggers at his belt, a bow behind her back. She moved like that the branches didn't stir under her feet. In the word she was a sprite with a set animations. Here she was more dangerous than any creature Aiden had encountered in this world. Serena examined him. She said he was weak, level 3, no armor, with a single dagger. And yet he spoke words known only to the elders of her people. How? Aiden said he had been searching for a long time. Serena said that wasn't true. She said the words of greeting existed only in her mind. She had never written them down, never spoken them aloud in front of strangers. They existed only in her memory. And he knew them. Aiden froze. In the game, the words were on a scroll, a text file in a database, accessible through a secret cache. But here, the world was alive. And the words weren't a file but the thoughts of a living being. He knew Serena's thoughts she hadn't told anyone. How to explain this? No way. He said he couldn't explain it, that he knew things he shouldn't know, that it frightened him, but that he was building a city, that the city needed intelligence, that she was the best scout on this continent, and that in 67 days demons would come, and he'd prefer to know about it in advance. Serena looked at him for a long time. Elves live for centuries. They don't rush into decisions. Then she said she'd go with him. Not because she trusts him, because a man who knows the words in her head is a mystery. And she doesn't know how to leave mysteries unsolved. She came to the city on the 120th day and vanished. She didn't leave. She vanished. She dissolved into the shadows and forests surrounding the walls. Aiden knew she was nearby. He could feel her gaze. 3 days later, she reappeared. She said she'd scouted the area within a 20-kilometer radius. 2 gangs to the north, a herd of wild boars to the east, an abandoned mine to the south with viable iron ore, and traces of scouts. Not human, demonic. 3 of them. They were coming from the south. They turned back 10 kilometers from the city. Aiden had expected them to show up, but not this early. According to his calculations, the demonic scouts were supposed to appear on the 150th day, 30 days earlier. The world was playing by its own rules again. He convened a council, the first real council in the city's history. Darian, Thorn, Serena, Kale, who had moved from Oldcrest and become the commander of the archers. 4 people at the table in the council house. Aiden explained the situation. The demons know about the city. The scouts have been here. Zaraxus's horde will attack on the 187th day, give or take a week, considering that timelines shift. About 1,000 demons. Lesser demons ranging from 5th to 10th level. Warrior demons from 15th to 20th. Elite demons from 25th to 30th. Zaraxus himself is 50th level. Darian asked where Aiden got this information. Aiden said it was from intelligence. Serena raised an eyebrow. She was a scout. She hadn't brought this information, but she kept quiet. Darian accepted the information as fact. A soldier, used to working with what he's given. He asked what forces the city had. Aiden listed them. 22 trained fighters. Of those, 10 spearmen, 4 swordsmen, 8 archers. A stone wall, 3 meters high. half a meter thick, 2 gates with towers. A smithy produces weapons, a stock of 300 arrows, 50 health potions. Darian said that 22 fighters against 1,000 demons wasn't a fight. It was suicide. Aiden said he knew, that he has a plan. But the plan needs time and something else. It needs meteorite metal for the star anvil. Thorn raised his head. His eyes lit up. Aiden said that in the mine to the south that Serena found, there's not just iron. Deeper down, there's a vein of stardust. Meteorite metal. It fell there thousands of years ago and became embedded in the rock. In the game, this mine was a secret location. Few people found it. If Thorn gets the metal and builds the star anvil, he'll be able to forge weapons that pierce demonic skin. Ordinary steel is useless against demons. They regenerate. Stellar metal blocks regeneration. Thorn said he needed the anvil's dimensions. Aiden pulled out a piece of paper with a blueprint he'd redrawn from memory. A complete blueprint. Every rune, every groove. Thorn looked at the blueprint and his hands trembled. He said it would take a month's work, if there's metal. Aiden said the metal would be ready in a week. Serena said she'd go to the mine and check. Darian said he'd continue training and start recruiting more people from the surrounding villages. The council meeting ended. Everyone dispersed. Aiden was left alone. He looked at the map he'd drawn on the wall, the city in the center, forests and hills all around, the mine to the south, Oldcrest to the north, Valgard to the east. Far to the south, beyond the mountains, lay demon territory. 87 days until the Horde. The world was moving faster than he'd expected. Every day brought a deviation from what he knew. A small one, but the deviations added up. The bandits' reconnaissance earlier, Darian's execution earlier, the demonic reconnaissance earlier, as if the world were speeding up, or learning. The system window flashed. A new quest. He had never seen a quest like this before. The text was simple. Hidden quest. Ruins of the Forerunner. Description. To the east of the city, beyond the cliff, lie the ruins. The one who built the city before you left a message. Reward unknown. Aiden reread it. The one who built the city before you. Before him, someone had already tried, and failed. Aiden went to ruins on a 15th day. 1. Serena wanted to go with him, but he refused. No, because that didn't trusted him. It's that didn't what he would find. The cliff to east of the city, steep slope, below a ravine overgrown with... In the game, here was an wall, the temps of the map, beyond. Aiden always knew that behind invisible walls there is... In 50's passing passage, he found a way to climb onto the invisible wall using a bug with jump from a certain rock. Over the wall was nothingness. Unloaded textures, gray screen, nothing. Here invisible wall was, there a ravine, and on bottom the ravine there rocks, not natural, worked, walls, foundations, debris of buildings, ruins of the city. He went down carefully. The slope was slippery. Roots stuck out the ground. The rocks were under our feet. On bottom he stopped and looked around. The ruins were old, very old. The walls were with moss. Trees have sprouted through the foundations. But the layout was clear. Streets, square, buildings, a wall. Or something that beyond it remains. The city. A real city. About the something that Aiden was right now. Maybe a little more. And he was destroyed. Not by time, by battle. Traces of fire on the stones, dents from impacts, cracks from something heavy and powerful. This city fought and lost. Aiden was down the street that no longer know. The stones underfoot, grass between them, silence. Even the birds did sing. He found the center, the square, and in the square stone, similar to Source Throne, only dead. No glow, just a stone with a crack, extinguished. At stone stood a building with a sign, metal, rusted, but the letters were legible. Aiden walked over and read. The City Arkhaven, founder Marcus Rain, day 1 to 847, defeated. Below another handwriting, smaller, carved with A and not stamped. To who finds it? I have to day 847. Source faded on day 730 when came God of the Abyss. The walls, they won't help against God. We need something else. I don't know what. Maybe you'll figure it out. Don't trust the system. It's watching, not you. Him. Signed, Marcus Rain. Aiden read it 3 times. Marcus Rain. A name that didn't appear in a single playthrough, not in a single file, in any guide. The man who was here before him, who built the city, who made it to day 847 and lost. Day 730. The God of the Abyss. Aiden knew that day. In his timeline, the God of the Abyss arrived on exactly day 730. Marcus made it to day 730 and lost the source. He held out another 117 days without it, and still lost. Walls won't help against a god. Something else is needed. What? Don't trust the system. It's watching, not you, him. Who? Aiden looked around. The ruins were silent. The wind swept leaves down the dead street. He searched the ruins for 3 hours, found the remains of a smithy, a molten anvil, an ordinary one, not a star-marked one. Found a barracks, bones, lots of bones. Marcus's men died here, defending the city. Found a library, burned down. But one chest had survived in the basement, locked. A complex lock, not a game lock, a mechanical one. Aiden fiddled with it for an hour, with a dagger and patience. The lock clicked. Inside lay a diary, thick, worn, leather-bound. The pages were yellowed. He opened the first page. The handwriting was even, neat. Day 1. My name is Marcus Rain. I'm a programmer. I worked at the company that created Eternal Throne Online. 3 days ago, the servers went down. I went to sleep and woke up here. System window, stealth mode, City of God. I don't know how this is possible. I helped write the code for this game. This mode isn't in the code. I checked. Aiden stopped breathing. A programmer. Marcus was one of the developers. He flipped through the pages. He read quickly. Day 30. The city is growing. 50 residents. They're real. They're not NPCs. They're people. I don't understand how. I wrote their dialogue. I created their models. But they're alive. They remember things I didn't program. They have thoughts that aren't in the database. Something's wrong. Day 100. I found an anomaly in the Tron source. It wasn't created by us. It was here before we connected. The whole game, the whole world. We didn't create it. We found it. We latched on like parasites. We superimposed our interface over a living world. For 8 years, players came here, killed, looted, and the NPCs remembered everything. Because they aren't NPCs. They've always been alive. Aiden closed the journal. His hands were shaking. He knew. From the world's description, he knew it was possible. But it's one thing to know it in theory. It's another to read the words of a man who helped build the game and discovered he'd been building on top of someone else's world. A living world. 8 years, millions of players, killing and looting creatures that were alive, that felt pain, that remembered. 100 playthroughs. Aiden had played through this game 100 times. How many had he killed? Thousands, tens of thousands. Every mob, every NPC in his path, every boss. He killed them and gained experience, and they were alive. Always. He sat in the basement of a dead library in a dead city, holding a dead man's diary, and the world around him was very quiet. Then he stood up, put the diary in his bag, climbed out of the basement, left the ruins, climbed up the slope, returned to his city. Alive, growing, with people who built houses and trained and baked bread, with people he had killed in 100 playthroughs, whom all the players had been killing for 8 years, and who remembered. Thorn approached in the evening. He asked what Aiden had found beyond the cliff. Aiden said he had found ruins, an old city, destroyed long ago. Thorn asked who had destroyed it. Aiden said he didn't know. It was a lie. He knew. God of the Abyss. Day 730. Walls don't help. Thorn looked at him, said that Aiden was lying. Aiden said yes. Thorn said he was used to it, and left. At night, Aiden sat on the wall and read his journal by torchlight. Day 200. The NPCs started to recognize me. Not as the founder, as a programmer, as one of those who created the interface. Some look at me with hatred. They remember what we did, remember the players, remember the deaths. Day 400. The blacksmith is my best friend here, but sometimes he looks at me in a way that makes me feel cold, as if he knows. Day 600. They know. Not all of them, but some. The old NPCs, the ones who lived in this world before us. They know we logged in. They know the players were real, and they know I'm one of the ones who let it happen. Day 700. The God of the Abyss is coming. Not a demon, not a mob, a God. A real God of this world. One of the 7. He's coming not because he wants the source. He's coming because he wants to talk. To the one who logged in. To me. Day 730. He arrived. He punched through the wall like it was paper, stood in the middle of the city, looked at me, said one word. Why? I couldn't answer. The source went out. God left. The city began to die. Day 847. This is the last entry. The city will fall tomorrow. I have no strength and no answer. To whoever comes after me, find the answer to God's question. Why? Why did you come to our world? Aiden closed the journal. 3 moons hung over the city, thousands of stars. The wind carried the smell of smoke from Thorn's forge. Somewhere, people were laughing. The night watch called to one another on the walls. Why? He had come here 100 times. Not once had he asked himself that question. Now the question had been asked, and in 605 days, the God of the Abyss would come for the answer. Diary. Marcus changed everything, not plan. The plan remained the same: walls, army, weapons, allies. But it has changed something as Aiden looked at every person in the city. He stood in market in 30th day and watched. The woman bargained with the salesman for a bunch carrots. 2 boys were a ball back and forth barrels. An old man sat by the wall and carved from wood a horse. An ordinary day, ordinary people, who he killed in hundreds passages, not these specifically, but ones. With the people and habits. He remembered one playthrough, the 33rd. He played a dark mage. For quest needs a of a NPC. He chose a random peasant on the road. 1 click. Spell of the spell. Minus health. Body to the ground. 200 points of experience. 3 seconds. He didn't remember that face of peasant. He think about him not once for all these years. And peasant was alive. And he died truly. And someone in this world remembered him. Aiden stood in the market and the world around his tougher. But work was wait. 40th day. Serena provided the aid about a demonic horde. She was to south, far away, toward the very borders of territory. I returned 10 days, thinner, with new scar on her arm. I reported dryly. The horde is gathering at Fortress of Xeraxis. The lesser demons about 700, warriors about 200, elite about 50, commanders 10. Xeraxis is leads. The time frame are coincide, day 180 to 190. Worse than Aiden expected. In the horde was about 1,000. Here closer to 1,000 with a few. And elite than that. Darian listened to the report with a stony face. Then he said that the numbers don't mean matter. That is, or 200 are equally are impossible for 30 fighters. The number has increased. Aiden was recruiting people from the surrounding villages. 30 fighters, 20 lancers, 10 archers, plus 40 militiamen who could have been on the wall and drop rocks, plus the population 200 people, among of whom women and the elderly who are to help. But against thousands demons it a handful. Thorn finished the anvil on 145th day. Aiden was in the square when the last blow of the sounded on the metal. The anvil stood in center the dark metal with silver veins. Runes glowed with a faint blue light. Thorn stood beside and looked at her like as some people see at their children, with reverence and fear at the same time. He said that this the best thing he has in his what hands remembered every blow, as if he had always knew how to do it. I just was the moment. He looked at Aiden. He asked quietly where he knew about the hammer, about drawing, about Starstone in mine. Where did that Thorn could? Aiden was the truth, he that he believed in Thorn. Thorn shook his head. He said that it was an answer, but will accept it. Because that the anvil is and the hammer is his hands, and this the only that matters. The work began in that same day. Star metal melted at a temperature which a crucible could provide. Thorn modified the horn, added bellows, raised the temperature. First ingot came out after 2 days, dark, heavy, with sparks inside that flickering like stars. Thorn began forging. Spearheads, sword blades, arrows. Stellar metal was capricious. Out of 10 attempts, 3 succeeded. But those 3 were perfect. A spearhead made of stellar metal pierced demonic hide like paper. Ordinary steel bounced off. Stellar metal penetrated and blocked regeneration. The wound would not heal. By the 160th day, the city had 20 spears with stellar tips, 10 swords, 50 arrows. Not enough. But each piece was worth 10 ordinary ones. Darian reorganized his tactics. The best fighters received the star weapons. Frontline spearmen, archers for elite targets. The rest fought with ordinary weapons. Their task was not to kill the demons, to hold them back, to slow them down, to buy time for those with star metal. Meanwhile, Aiden had reached level 5, slowly. Without dungeons or farming, he gained experience only from building and managing. The system gave him crumbs, but each level made his body stronger, faster, more resilient. At level 5, he could run for an hour without getting out of breath and lift stones he couldn't have moved before. Day 165. A letter arrived. Not a system message, a real letter, a black leather envelope, a red wax seal with a horned skull. A guard found it pinned to the gate that morning, with a dagger, a demonic dagger. Aiden opened the envelope. The handwriting was neat, almost elegant. I hear you've built a city. Nice. I'll be there in 22 days. Make some tea. Xeraxis. Aiden read it again. 22 days. Day 187. Right on schedule. Despite all the shifts, this deadline hasn't changed. As if day 187 were carved in stone. He showed the letter to Darian. The general read it and said it was a psychological attack. That demons don't write letters. That Xeraxis is playing with them. Wants them to be afraid. Wants them to run. Then there's no need to attack the walls. Aiden said it wasn't a game. Then he corrected himself. That it was, in fact, a game, but a real one. Darian didn't understand. Aiden didn't bother to explain. Instead, He asked Darien if the fighters were ready. Darien said the spearmen were holding their formation. The archers could hit a target from 50 meters. The militia wouldn't run. Maybe. Aiden asked if that would be enough. Darien said plainly, no. Against 1,000 demons, the city would fall. The question isn't whether it will hold out. The question is how long it will last. An hour, 3, a day, a week. It depends on the walls. It depends on the weapons. It depends on how quickly they can kill the elite. Because without the elite, the lower-ranking demons lose their coordination. They turn into a mob. A mob can be held back. An army cannot. Aiden nodded. He knew this from the game. The demonic horde operated according to a hierarchy. Zaraxus at the top. Below him, 10 commanders. Below the commanders, the elite. Below the elite, the warriors. Below the warriors, the lower-ranking demons. Kill the top ones, and the lower ones will scatter. But the top ones were monstrously strong. Zaraxus was level 50, alone, against a level 5 city. In the game, it would have been an impossible battle. But the game had mechanics that might not exist here, or there were new ones. Aiden spent the next 20 days preparing. The walls grew to 4 meters high, a moat around the walls, 2 meters deep, filled with water from the river. Demons hated water. The lower ones lost half their speed in it. That was from the game mechanics. He didn't know if it worked here. But they dug the moat anyway. Oil traps in front of the gates, barrels of oil on the walls, set them alight at the right moment, and a 20-meter wall of fire. Lower demons burn well. Stone platforms on the walls for archers, cover from ranged attacks. 3 lines of defense: the wall, the square, the source. If the wall falls, retreat to the square. If the square falls, the last line of defense is at the source. Day 185. 2 days until the horde. The city stood still. People weren't laughing. Children weren't running. Even the source pulsed more slowly, like a heart that stops before a leap. Serena arrived with the latest report. The horde is 40 kilometers away, moving slowly, destroying everything in its path. 2 villages burned. No survivors. Aiden took in refugees from a 3rd village that managed to escape. 40 people. Women. Children. The elderly. The city's population had exceeded 200. 200 people behind stone walls. 30 fighters armed with star metal weapons. Against 1,000 demons. Darien stood on the wall and looked south.
Aiden stood beside him. They were silent. Then Darien said that in 20 years of service, he had seen many hopeless battles, and that none of them had been as hopeless as this one. Aiden said he had another plan. Darien asked what it was. Aiden said that Zaraxus would come in person, and that Zaraxus had a weakness in the game. Aiden fell silent. Then he continued. His left eye, an old wound from a divine weapon, covered by a bandage. If a star arrow hit it, Zaraxus would lose control for 10 seconds. In the game, that was enough to deal critical damage. Here, it might be enough to cause the Horde's command structure to collapse for those same 10 seconds. Darien asked who would hit the eye of a level 50 demon. Aiden said Kale, from 30 meters, at a running rabbit. Darien looked at Aiden for a long time. Then he said that Aiden was either a genius or a madman, and that in 2 days they would find out which. Day 187th began with silence. Not wind, no birds, not even the river flowed quieter, as if the world had held its breath. Aiden stood in the south wall at dawn. Serena left into night and returned before dawn. She said that Horde in 5 kilometers away. Set up camp. Bonfires burned red, not orange as a fire, red. A demonic flame. Air smells of sulfur even in such distance. The population took in basements and the date of the spring. 203 people. From them, 30 on the walls, spearmen at the gate, archers on platforms, militiamen with stones and boiling oil. Kale stood in the southern tower.
the highest point, best view. Added had 5 arrows from stellar metal, 1 for Xeraxis, 4 for commanders. Darien passed along the wall. To each said a few words. He speech, not motivation, just words. To everyone their own. Kellen said that believes in his spear.
The old guard from Oldcrest said that today is a day to show on what he's.
A young guy with shaking hands said that it's is, and that bravery is not the absence of fear, but a decision that is things more important. The guy stopped shaking. At 5 minutes, Aiden stood beside with Darien by the southern gate, the sword of stellar metal on belt, the first sword which Thorn forged, the best. The blade was dark with silvery sparks inside, a beautiful weapon, for a beautiful Finnish world. They came at noon. The earth shook first, then a sound, a low rumbling, thousands legs on earth. Then the smell, sulfur and rot and something sour. Then they appeared, because the southern Hilla, black pieces, lower demons, small, humpbacked, fanged. They ran on all fours like beasts, for them above warriors, in 2 times tall, red skin, horns, swords made black bone, for behind are higher, elite, 3 meter tall, in armor made chitin, with weapon that smoked, and for everyone on the stood, Xeraxis. Aiden recognized him instantly. One time seen on the screen, pixel model, set of polygons. Here, Xeraxis was a nightmare in flesh, 5 meters tall, black wings folded behind his back, 6 horns crown made bone and darkness. 1 eye glows red, the other is covered with a bandage made black leather. On right hand, a sword with a tree. He stood and looked at city, on walls, at people on walls, and smiled, or something that was a smile of the... The horde stopped at 300 meters. Beyond, out of the meadows. We waited. Xeraxis raised his hand. The lower demons howled. The sound pierced the ears. Several militiamen clamped their heads. One ran from the wall. Darien intercepted him by the collar. Put back. He said one word. Stand. He stayed. Xeraxis lowered his hand. The horde moved, not running, at a walking pace, slowly, inevitable. They knew that the city was going anywhere. 300 meters, 250, 200. The archers raised their bows. Kale stood motionless. His target was not the first wave. 150 meters, 100. Aiden shouted, "Fire!" 10 bows sang out. Arrows flew, ordinary arrows, for the lower ones. The first wave came to the moat. The water slowed them, not half as in the game, 1/3, but slowed down. They floundered in water. The archers were shooting. The lower demons fell. 1 arrow, 1 demon, weak, but there many, very many. Dozens made it from the ditch, ran toward the wall, oil traps. Aiden gave the signal. The barrels tipped over. Oil spilled across ground in front of the wall. The torch fell. The wall of fire, 3 meters high. The demons squealed. They burned. They writhed. The smell of burnt flesh hit my face. The militiamen on the wall turned pale. Some vomited, but they stood their ground. The first wave choked. 40 of the demons lay in the moat and the wall, the burning and dead. But behind them followed second wave, and third, and warriors. The second wave crossed over the corpses, jumped the burning oil, made it to the wall. Claws scraped against the stone. They climbed up like lizards. The spearmen met them. Star tips were entering into demonic flesh, and wounds did heal. The demons squealed and fell. But in 1133, the wall was long, their few. Aiden ran along the wall. He cut with his sword those who climbed over. The blade cut the demonic skin like paper, but it were 2. The first demon warrior made it to the wall through 20 minutes.
2.25 meters. Red leather, sword made black bone. He leapt over wall and jump. He landed in the courtyard. 2 militiamen rushed at him. He killed both with a single blow. Darien intercepted it. The old general with his usual sword against a demon warrior of the level. In this was impossible. Here Darien dodged from the first blow. He under the second. He slashed across the tendon on leg. The demon fell on his neck. Darien struck on the neck. Ordinary steel penetrated only shallowly, but it was enough. The demon collapsed. Darien stood over him. He breathing, blood on his face. Not mine. One warrior leapt over the wall, another one. The stuff began to crack. An had passed. The wall held, but the fighters were falling. 2 spearmen were killed, 3 were wounded, 5 militiamen were dead. The arrows were running out. Kale fired 3-star arrows. 3 demon commanders fell. The lower ranks faltered. Without their commanders, the attack became chaotic. But the elite led the way themselves. They didn't need orders. 2 hours. The southern wall cracked. An elite demon pounded it with his fists. Every blow shook the stone. The crack spread. Another blow. Stones rained down. A breach, 1 meter wide. Demons poured through it. Darien threw in the reserves. 4 spearmen blocked the breach with their bodies. The star spears worked. Demons fell in the opening, but the spearmen were falling too, one after another. 3 hours. The wall had fallen in 2 places. The city was burning. Not all of it. 2 houses on the south side. Demonic fire. It was useless to try to put it out. Aiden stood in the square, the second line of defense. 15 fighters remained, against hundreds of demons behind the wall. But the hundreds were lowly. Without commanders, they ran about aimlessly, attacking each other, demolishing houses instead of searching for people. The 3 commanders killed by Kale had disrupted the coordination of the left flank. That bought time. Then Zaraxis moved. He walked across the moat, oblivious to the water. Through the fire, oblivious to the flames. Through the wall, oblivious to the stone. He simply walked right through it. Stones flew apart. The wall crumbled over a 10-meter stretch. He entered the city as a master enters a house. He stopped in the square. He looked at Aiden. Aiden looked at him. The system window flashed. Archdemon Zaraxis, level 50. Standing before him was the final raid boss. In the game, he was killed by a group of 40 players, each above level 40, with the best gear, in 20 minutes of intense combat. Aiden was level 5, with a single sword, in the square of a small town. Zaraxis leaned down. He looked down at Aiden. He spoke in a low voice that made the ground tremble. He said the town was small, that he hadn't found any tea, that he was disappointed. Aiden didn't answer. He looked at the tower behind Zaraxis, the southern tower, where Kale stood, with his last star arrow. Zaraxis caught his gaze, began to turn. Aiden did the only thing he could. He lunged at Zaraxis, with his star sword. The blow landed on his leg. The blade went in 2 centimeters. For a level 50 demon, it was a scratch, but the star metal burned. Zaraxis growled. He turned toward Aiden. He was distracted for a second. Kale fired. The arrow flew 30 meters. It hit its mark, in the left eye, under the bandage. The starlight metal pierced an old wound. Zaraxis roared. The sound struck their ears like a fist. Windows shattered, stones cracked. The demon clutched his face. He fell to one knee. 10 seconds. Aiden knew it was 10 seconds. He shouted, "Retreat to the source! Everyone run!" People ran. Darien picked up the wounded man. Serena leapt out of the shadows and dragged 2 militiamen behind her. Thorn carried the child in his arms. 10 seconds passed. Zaraxis stood up. An arrow protruded from his eye socket. Black blood flowed.
He was furious. But the square was empty. The people had retreated to the source, the last line. Zaraxis stepped toward them. The source flared. The golden glow grew brighter, brighter, blindingly bright. A dome of golden light enveloped the people. The demons around them recoiled. The lesser ones shrieked and ran. The warriors closed their eyes. Even the elite retreated. Zaraxis stopped. The light burned him, not with fire, with something else. He raised his hand to shield his face, then lowered it. He looked at the source, at the people beneath the golden dome, at Aiden, who stood before the source with a sword in his hand. Zaraxis said it was interesting. He said the source had responded, that he hadn't seen anything like it in a long time. He said he would return, and turned around. He walked toward the wall, walked through it, left the city, raised his hand. The horde stopped, turned around. It followed him, slowly, without haste. Just as they had come, so they left. The golden dome held for another hour, then it slowly faded. The people stood motionless. No one spoke. Aiden sank to the ground. The sword fell from his hand. He was alive. The city was alive. 7 fighters had died, 12 militiamen, 2 children who hadn't been able to be carried out of their home when the fire started. A third of the southern wall was destroyed, 2 houses burned down. But the city stood. The source had saved them. Not Aiden, not Darian, not Kale. The source. How and why, he didn't know. There was no such mechanic in the game. Marcus's diary said nothing about a protective dome. The source did something that hadn't happened in a single playthrough, in a single save file, in a single guide. The world played by its own rules, and this time, the rules were on Aiden's side. People began clearing away the bodies, repairing the wall, putting out the embers, silently, without orders. Thorn grabbed a hammer and headed for the forge. Darian sat down on a rock and closed his eyes. Serena disappeared into the forest to check that the horde had truly left. Kale came down from the tower. His hands weren't shaking. He approached Aiden. He said he'd hit it. Aiden said yes. Kale nodded. He turned and went to help with the wounded. By evening, a sign appeared at the gate. One of the residents had carved it into a board. Crosshold. The City of Aiden Cross. Aiden stood in front of the sign and didn't know what to say. In 100 playthroughs, his name had been used for swords and armor, legendary items. Not once had a city been named after him. Not once had a home been named after him. After the battle with Horde, Crosshold remained silent for 3 days. People worked but didn't talk. They buried the dead. They repaired walls. We gathered the rubble. 19 graves on the hill to east of the city. Thorn forged 19 small stars from the remnants of metal. From one every grave. He said that they deserved it. No one argued. Aiden stood by the graves by the 90 day and counted the names. 7 soldiers. Among them Grant. The very then who refused to dig holes in the gorge. Who didn't believe in bandits. Who brought Aiden some after the battle for Oldcrest. Grant stood on the wall when the demons. I fought with a spear. I killed 2 lowlifes. The third killed him. In the Grant was NPC number 4 without a name and without a story. Here at him was a grave with a star. 2 children. A boy 7 years old, a girl 5. They were in the house when demonic fire fell on the roof. Their mother survived. She didn't speak with those people. She sat by the graves and remained silent. Aiden didn't know what to say. For 100 playthroughs, he had learned to speak with his mother who had her children. It was such quest. The city was faster than he expected. Source helped. After the activation, the dome, its radius increased to 1 kilometer. The fiddles has increased to 40%. Wounds healed within days instead of weeks. The walls grew faster because that the workers got tired slower. By the 200th day, the wall was restored. Higher previous, 5 meters, 1 meter thick. Darien insisted on buttresses, stone buttresses every 10 meters. To even an elite demon could break with his fist. The population was growing. Rumor about the city that withstood against the hordes of Xeraxis dispersed through the region. People came every day, by 5, 10, in families, by villages. 250th day, the population had over 500. System window was refreshing. The point of his 4 new features: alchemy laboratory, school, trading post, wall of the 3rd level. But Aiden was looking at the city. He was looking at the calendar in his head. Day 187 has passed. The demons have been repelled. The next threat on the timeline. Day 340. Order of Light. High Priest Celestine. 50 days. In the Order of Light was a faction of fanatics. White armor, golden symbols, beautiful banners, and absolute conviction that they are right. Source throne for them was a gift from the gods, a sacred relic, and he must belong the order, not some city of refugees and peasants. Celestine did not an army of demons, he led of men, 3,000 paladins, trained, armed, the convinced that are being taken source into the name the good. Against demons, Crosshold could defend without moral doubts. The demons were evil, pure and simple. But Order of Light, this were people who believed that they were good. Aiden couldn't just put a wall and shoot. 260th day came Nimra. Aiden was expected her. Not in this day. In the Nimra, they're a mini-boss in demonic territory. Demoness of 20. Fast. Deadly. 2 curved blades. Tail with a poisonous spike. Horns small, almost hidden under black hair. If you look at skin, the ashen eyes with vertical pupils, she could have passed for a human. Almost. Guard at the gate raised the alarm when they saw her on the road. Archers drew their bows. Darien came out with his sword. Aiden stopped everyone. He told them to let her through. Darien looked at him as if he were crazy. He said she was a demon. That 3 weeks ago, demons had killed 19 of their people. Aiden said he knew. He told them to let her through. Nimra entered the city. Every resident on the street recoiled. The mother of the dead children saw her and screamed. The first sound in 70 days. A scream of hatred. Nimra stopped. She looked at the woman. In the demoness's eyes was something Aiden hadn't expected. Shame. She approached Aiden. She said she hadn't come to fight. She said she had left Xeraxis. That she didn't agree with what he was doing, that the Horde wasn't an army but a meat grinder, and that Xeraxis didn't want to conquer the world, but to burn it. Aiden asked why he should believe her. Nimra said there was no need. She said trust isn't given, it's earned. She's ready to earn it. She's just asking for a chance. In the game, Nimra had one function: to die. The player killed her and gained experience and a rare blade. Over 100 playthroughs, Aiden killed her 100 times. A quick fight, 20 seconds, loot on the ground, next. Now she stood before him, alive, and asked for a chance. He gave it to her. Darien was against it. Serena was against it. Thorn shrugged and said he didn't need the Forge to make decisions about demons. Kale said nothing. Aiden settled Nimra in a house on the outskirts of town, far from people. He gave her time. Time resolves what words cannot. Nimra began to provide information about Xeraxis, about his plans, about the second wave he was preparing. But not only that. She spoke of the demonic hierarchy, of internal conflicts, of the fact that not all demons want war, that there were clans that would prefer trade, and that Xeraxis suppressed them by force. This was new. In the game, the demons were a monolith, one faction, one goal. Here, they were a people, with disagreements and politics and dreams that weren't limited to destruction. Aiden listened, and the world became more complicated again. On the 280th day, Aiden turned his attention to the Order of Light. Not the walls. Diplomacy. He knew Celestine from the game, high priest, fanatic, but not a fool. In the game, he had a hidden stat: doubt. Deep down, Celestine wasn't sure the gods existed, that the source was truly a gift from above. He believed because he was afraid not to believe, because without faith, the Order was just an army.
And without an army, Celestine was just an old man in a white cloak. Aiden wrote a letter. Not an ultimatum, not a threat, an invitation. He invited Celestine to visit Crosshold, to see the source, in person, without an army, alone, with a guarantee of safety. Serena delivered the letter via the network of elven scouts in 6 days. The reply came 12 days later. Celestine agreed, on one condition. He would bring 10 paladins as guards, not an army, an entourage. Aiden agreed. Darian said it was a trap. Aiden said it might be, but that 3,000 paladins at the walls was a guaranteed disaster, and one priest with 10 guards was a conversation. He preferred a conversation. Celestine arrived on the 300th day. A white carriage, white horses, 10 paladins in gleaming armor, handsome, perfect, like a picture from an advertisement. Celestine stepped out of the carriage. An old man, 70 years old, a white beard, blue eyes, a soft voice. In the game, he was a quest NPC who sent players on missions. Here, he exuded a sense of power, quiet and profound. He looked at Crosshold, at the walls, at the people, at Nimra, who stood in the street, her horns exposed, at the graves on the hill, at the smithy from which the clang of a hammer could be heard. Then he looked at the source and froze. A golden glow reflected in his eyes. He stood before the source for a long time. A minute, 5, 10. The paladins were getting nervous. The residents were getting nervous. Darian stood with his hand on his sword. Then Celestine turned to Aiden. His eyes were wet. He said that the source was alive. He said that in 70 years of service, he had prayed and never received an answer. But here, a stone in the clearing glowed, radiating warmth and peace and something he couldn't describe in words. Aiden said that the source responded to people, to the city, to those who build, not destroy. Celestine asked why, then, it hadn't responded to the Order. The Order built temples, schools, hospitals. Aiden said the Order built for glory, for power, to prove the gods were on its side. Crosshold built to survive, so people could live. The difference isn't in the walls, it's in the reason. Celestine was silent. Then he said that was heresy. Then he said that perhaps heresy is closer to the truth than dogma. They talked for 3 days, Aiden and Celestine, about the city, about faith, about why people build and why they destroy. On the 3rd day, Celestine said he wouldn't lead the army to Crosshold. He said he would lead the Order away, but not because he believed Aiden, because the source had answered him. For the first time in 70 years, and he wanted to understand what that meant. The paladins left. Aiden stood on the wall and watched as the white carriage disappeared behind the hill. Darian stood beside him. He said he didn't understand, that Aiden had just led an army of 3,000 men away with a single conversation. Aiden said it wasn't just one. The source helped. Darian said stones don't negotiate. Aiden said this one does. 350th day. Crosshold more no was villages. It was a settlement. It was city. A real one. 1,000 inhabitants. Mithril walls. Thorn found a vein of mithril in the mountains to the west and forged plates for cladding. They became silvery. It shone in sun, visible for miles. A symbol, a beacon. Inside the walls, life. 4 streets, the market in the square, torn, and 3 apprentices.
alchemy laboratory, school where children learn to read and count. The Mira, barracks 100 soldiers, stable, warehouses, tavern. Temple of the Dict with a golden dome which the residents built themselves. And people. 1,000 people who every morning woke up and went to work so that it them had a home. That's that the walls stood, and the gates were closing at night, and in the morning they opened. Aiden stood on the tower and was watching at the city from above. He remembered the hut, 4 twigs and a roof made leaves. 350 days ago, now 1,000 people. The date of 80 fighters, mithril walls, star weapons, source of the 6th level with a radius 2 kilometers. But in head pounded one thought. Day 730, God of the Abyss. 380 days until the question to which he did had answer. Why? Why did come to our world? Marcus didn't find answer. Aiden hasn't either. But there were and immediate problems. Guilds, NPCs, 4 armies, Free Swords, Iron Covenant, Crimson Legion, Silver Company. In this were neutral factions, mercenaries. They worked for the guild who paid. 4 armies by 500 soldiers, 2 warriors in total. Levels from level to 30th, well-armed, well-trained, motivated by gold. In the game, they attacked the source on the 400th day. Here, the timeline could shift again. Serena confirmed it. Guild scouts appeared on the 340th day, 10 days ago. The mercenaries knew about Crosshold, knew about the source, knew about the mithril walls and the star weapons. Information cost money. Someone was paying. A different strategy was needed against the guilds. Not traps, not diplomacy. Money. Or something more valuable than money. Aiden called a council. Darian, Thorn, Serena, Kale, Nimra. 5 at the table. Aiden was the 6th. He laid out the map. 4 guilds, 4 camps, approximate locations. Serena clarified. The Free Swords in the north, the Iron Covenant in the west, the Crimson Legion in the southeast, the Silver Company in the east, all within a 100-kilometer radius. They're preparing. They're waiting. Waiting for what? Each other. No guild wants to attack first and lose men so the others can come in and reap the rewards. A stalemate. They're waiting for someone to make the first move, or until they're paid enough to start. Aiden said he wouldn't wait. He said he'd go to them. Darian asked if he'd take an army. Aiden said no. Alone. Darian said that was madness. The 2nd time this year. Aiden said the first time worked. Valgard. Darian. Prison. Darian said that was different. Aiden said it's always different. And always the same. Find a person. Talk. Convince. He knew the guild leaders from the game. Every one of them. Their stories, their motivations, their hidden stats. Free Swords. Commander Ravensteel, a 35-year-old woman. In the game, she gave bounty hunting quests. She valued freedom more than gold. Problem. She believed the source was a weapon, that whoever controlled the source controlled the world. She didn't want anyone to control the world, not even Aiden, especially not Aiden. Aiden went to her first, found the Free Swords camp on the 360th day. 500 warriors in tents, good equipment, discipline. Raven received him in the command tent. Tall, red hair, a scar across her eyebrow, 2 swords at her belt. She asked why he had come. Aiden said he had come to offer a job. Raven laughed. She said she had already been offered a job. To kill him and take the source. The pay was good. Aiden asked who was paying. Raven said it was confidential. Aiden said it was most likely the Pantheon. The gods use mortals as pawns, always. Raven stopped laughing. Aiden knew he'd hit the mark. There was a hidden line in Raven's lore. Her family had been killed by a god, one of the 7 of the Pantheon. In passing, by accident, divine power swept through the village, and the village was gone. Raven survived because she was in the woods. She was 10. She hated the gods more than she loved gold. Aiden said that the source of the throne isn't a weapon, it's a defense. Against the gods, against the pantheon, against those who killed her family. If the guilds destroy Crosshold, the source will go out, and the gods will get what they want. A world without protection. Raven was silent for a long time. Then she asked how he knew about her family. Aiden said he knew a lot, that he couldn't explain where it came from, but that every word he spoke was true. Raven said she would check, that if he was lying, she would kill him herself. Aiden said that was fair. Raven did not join Crosshold, but she led the free swords away. 500 warriors went north, 1 guild out of 4. The Iron Covenant was more complicated. Commander Balthazar Grimm, an old mercenary, 60 years old, a cynic. In the game, he was motivated only by gold. No hidden stats, no tragic backstory, just a man who sold his sword to whoever paid the most. Aiden offered him a contract, to defend Crosshold, payment in mithril. Mithril was worth 10 times as much as gold. Balthazar haggled for 2 days. He squeezed 6 months' worth of a blacksmith's wages out of Aiden in mithril. But he agreed. 500 mercenaries set up camp at the walls of Crosshold. Not inside, outside. Balthazar didn't trust the walls. He preferred his own tents. The Crimson Legion and the Silver Company remained. 1,000 warriors. Without the first 2 guilds, they didn't dare attack the mithril walls defended by the Iron Covenant. They waited. Serena reported that they were getting nervous. The money from the client was coming in, but attacking together was risky. Aiden gave them time. Time was on his side. With each passing day, the city grew. With each passing day, the army grew stronger. With each passing day, the walls grew thicker. By the 400th day, the Crimson Legion had left. They'd found an easier contract. The Silver Company held out until the 420th. Then they left too, without a fight, without a single arrow. Aiden outmaneuvered the guilds because he knew their leaders. He knew that Raven hated the gods. He knew that Balthazar loved mithril. He knew that without the 2 guilds, the remaining ones wouldn't dare. 100 playthroughs, an encyclopedia of the world in his head. Every piece of knowledge was a weapon. Darian stood on the wall and watched as the last mercenaries of the Silver Company disappeared over the horizon. He turned to Aiden. He said that in 20 years of command, he had won 30 battles. He had never won a war without a single battle. Aiden said that this wasn't a war, it was a bargain. Darian said that when people stopped dying for someone else's money, the world would become a better place. Aiden said that for that to happen, the world would first have to survive day 730. Day 600, 1.5 years. Crosshold became the capital, not by decree, de facto. The surrounding villages joined voluntarily. Oldcrest was the first. Olvin came in person. He had aged. He's gone even, but he walked steady. He said that the village wants to become part Crosshold. What do you want? Walls and protection and a future. Aiden accepted. By the 600th day, 3,000 people lived under Crosshold's protection. The city itself. 12 villages within a 30-kilometer radius. Trade routes, patrols, laws that Aiden had drafted in a single night, drawing on the best systems from various playthroughs and discarding the worst. Thorn became the master of the Blacksmith's Guild. He had 12 apprentices. The Star Anvil worked non-stop. Mithril armor for elite fighters, star weapons for officers, ordinary steel for the militia. The Crosshold Forge forged the best weapons on the continent. Thorn knew this, and he was proud. But more and more often he looked at Aiden with that gaze Marcus had described in his diary. Cold. Not angry, but knowing. One evening, Thorn came to see Aiden at the council house. He sat down, placed his hands on the table, was silent. Then he said that his daughter, Lyra,
was 22 years old, that she had been sick as a child, that the herbalist in the village where they lived had said the illness would return, that on the 300th day of Lyra's life, the illness would kill her. Aiden froze. The 300th day. In the game, Thorn's daughter died on the 300th day from the illness. Script: irreversible. No player could save her. No potion, no spell, no quest. She simply died. Text on the screen. Thorn mourned for 3 days according to the in-game timer. Then he went back to work. Over 100 playthroughs, she died 100 times. Thorn said that Lyra is 22 now, that the 300th day, according to some calendar he doesn't understand, has already passed, that Lyra is healthy, that the illness hasn't returned, and that the only thing that has changed is that a vial of pale blue liquid appears on Lyra's desk every month. No note, no explanation. Lyra drinks it and feels fine. Thorn looked Aiden in the eyes. He asked quietly, "It was you." Aiden didn't answer right away. On the 50th day, he went into the Silver Grove dungeon, alone, at night. A 3rd-level dungeon. For him, a 5th-level dungeon isn't fatal, but it's difficult. He killed the Grove's guardian, a crystal deer, a beautiful creature. As it died, the deer looked at him with eyes that held something too alive for a mob. Aiden took the loot. Moon nectar, a potion that heals diseases, a useless item in the game, sold for 5 coins. Here, it was medicine. He killed a living creature for medicine for a girl he had never seen, because in 100 playthroughs, she died 100 times, and he never once tried to stop it. He looked at Thorn, said yes. It was him. Thorn asked how he knew, about the illness, about the medicine, about the date. Aiden was silent. Then he told the truth. Not all of it, part of it. He said he could see the future, that he knew things that hadn't happened yet, that he couldn't explain how, that every time he saved someone, it was because in another life, he hadn't. Thorn was silent for a long time. Then he said he didn't understand, but that his daughter was alive, and that was the only thing that mattered. He stood up, walked to the door, stopped, said without turning around that Aiden was a good person, even if he was lying, even if he knew too much. Good, because he could have chosen not to save her, and he did. He left. Aiden sat alone. For the first time in this world, someone had told him he was a good person. Over 100 playthroughs, he had been a hero, a legend, a walking wiki, but not a good person. Heroes kill bosses and collect loot. Good people save blacksmiths' daughters. The days passed. 650, 700. Aiden could feel the world changing. The sky grew darker, not physically, energetically. The source pulsed faster, like a heart sensing danger. Nimra said the demons in the south had gone quiet. Zaraxis hadn't attacked. He hadn't moved. He was waiting, as if he knew someone stronger was coming. Serena returned from scouting with news. A rift had opened in the west, a crack in the sky, black with purple edges. Energy poured from it, killing the grass within a kilometer's radius. The god of the abyss. He wasn't coming. He was manifesting, like a storm gathering on the horizon, slowly, inevitable. Aiden reread Marcus's diary that night, for the 10th time. The words burned in his head. Walls won't help against a god. Something else is needed. He said one word. Why? Why did you come to our world? Aiden sat on the wall of Crosshold. 3,000 people slept behind him. The children he had saved, the soldiers he had trained, the blacksmith who called him a good man, the scout who came because he knew the words in her head, the general he pulled out of prison, the demoness who deserted for a chance. Why did he come to this world?
100 times he came to win, to kill, to gather, to pass through, to get an achievement, to complete the quest. This world was a playground, a resource, content. He never considered that the world was alive, that the creatures in it felt, that the blacksmith had a daughter and she was dying, that the scout had thoughts no one should know, that the general had principles he was willing to die for. Why? He didn't know the answer, but he knew the answer lay somewhere in what he'd been doing for the last 700 days. Not in the walls, not in the weapons, not in the tactics, in the people. In the fact that for the first time in 100 playthroughs, he was building rather than destroying. For the first time, he saw people in the NPCs. For the first time, he cried when the blacksmith's daughter survived. Maybe the answer wasn't in words. Maybe the answer was in the city. Day 730, exactly 2 years. God of the Abyss came at dawn. Not an army, not horde. One. He marched across field toward the west. Each of his steps left a crater in ground. The grass turned black and crumbled into ashes. The air around it trembled like from heat. But heat was there. It was cold, deep, otherworldly. It was huge, bigger Xeraxis, 10 meters. The figure from the Andros in emptiness. The contours of the body like cracks in reality. Eyes, 2 stars in the abyss of the face. He was a creature of flesh. He was a hole in the world, a place where the world ended and began something else. The guard on the walls stood still. No one did raised a bow, not because that didn't want to, it's that we couldn't. The body refused to move beside with the deity. Instinct, ancient, deeper fear. Understanding that you power that cannot kill. Aiden stood in the south wall and watched. In the game, God of the Abyss was a raid boss. Level 100. Required a group of 80 players. The best equipment. Perfect coordination. And even then half the group perished. Here was any group of 80. There, Aiden, 12th level. And city. God stopped in 50 meters from the wall. I looked at her. Mithril glistened silver. A beautiful wall. Sturdy. He raised his hand. He ran his finger through the air. The wall cracked. From the base to the top, a 5-meter mithril wall thick 1 meter, cracked from a single gesture, like glass. He could destroy the city in second, could kill everyone in 2, but not. I took into crack. I walked through the wall, stood in the middle of the square. People were running. They screamed. Darian tried to organize a retreat. Thorn stood in front of the smithies with a hammer in hand and did move. Serena disappeared. Nimra fell to her knees. She trembled her body. She was a demon. To her, God of the Abyss was that as the sun to a candle. Absolute power. God turned around. He looked at Source Throne. The golden glow faded. It pulsed quickly, frightened. The source was afraid. The deity took a step toward the source. Aiden jumped from the wall. He landed in the square. My knees hit against the stone. It hurts. I got up. I walked to God. Every step was with difficulty. The air around the deity was thick as water. It weighed on chest, on shoulders, on thoughts. I wanted fall and not get up. I wanted close my eyes and for all of this to be a dream. Aiden walked on. God stopped, turned toward him. 2 stars instead of eyes. They were watching. Through him. Not at Aiden, through him. As if they saw everything he did. All 100 playthroughs. Every murder. Every destroyed house. Every NPC who died by his hand. God spoke. The voice was not a sound. The voice was a vibration in his bones and thoughts in his head and pain in his chest all at once. He asked one word. Why? The same word he had said to Marcus, the same one carved on the plaque in the ruins. Why did you come to our world? Aiden stood before God. Level 12, a sword of starlight metal at his belt. useless against this being. No weapon in the world would help. No wall, no army. Marcus hadn't found the answer. Marcus didn't have an answer because he had come to this world as a programmer, as a creator, as someone who considered the world his product, a thing, a resource. Aiden came here as a player, as a destroyer, as someone who had played through this world 100 times from start to finish and never once considered that the world was real. But over 730 days, something had changed. Aiden opened his mouth. He spoke. His voice trembled, but he spoke. He said he came because he didn't know how to live in his own world, that he fled here because it was easier here. Here there were rules, levels, goals. Kill the boss, get the reward, move on. His world was complex and incomprehensible and terrifying. This world was simple. It was a game. He said he'd come 100 times, that he'd killed, that he'd destroyed, that he hadn't thought of anyone but himself, that every NPC was just a line of code and a bag of experience to him, that he didn't know they were alive. But that wasn't an excuse, because he hadn't asked. He didn't want to know. It was easier not to know. He said that this time everything was different, that he was building, for the first time, that he saw how people lived and worked and had children and buried the dead, that he saved the blacksmith's daughter who died in every playthrough, that he pulled the general out of prison, that he gave a chance to the demoness he had killed 100 times, that he built a city, not a fortress, a city, with people who have names and stories and dreams. He said he couldn't bring back those he'd killed, couldn't undo 100 playthroughs, couldn't erase 8 years, but he could build. He could protect. He could, for the first time in his life, create something that would outlast him. He fell silent. The god of the abyss watched him. 2 stars burned steadily. The square was silent. 1,000 people stood and watched. Thorn with a hammer, Darian with a sword, Kale with a bow, Nimra on her knees. Somewhere in the shadows, Serena. Somewhere in the crowd, a mother who had lost her children. Somewhere in the basements, children who didn't understand why the adults were crying. The god spoke again. The voice was quieter, softer, still painful but no longer crushing. He said there had been 100 playthroughs, that for the first time someone had chosen walls over a sword, built for the first time, that they had been waiting, the world had been waiting, waiting for the stranger from beyond the border to see, to truly see, that the world is alive, that the beings within it are not resources, not content, not lines of code, that they breathe and love and fear and hope. He said that Marcus couldn't. Marcus saw the code. He didn't see life. Aiden could, because he stopped playing. He started living. God raised his hand, not to strike. He touched the source throne. A golden glow flared brighter than the sun. A wave of heat swept through the city, through the walls, through the people, through the earth. The crack in the wall closed. The mithril fused seamlessly. The source hummed, low, deep, like the heart of the world. A system window flashed before Aiden. The throne source has been upgraded to maximum level. Radius of influence, 10 kilometers. Protection against divine attacks activated. The god of the abyss turned. He walked toward the wall. He stopped. He didn't turn back. He spoke for the last time. His voice sounded different. Not like a god, like a human, like a developer. He said the real game was beginning, that the war of the creators lay ahead, that the gods of the pantheon would not agree, that they wanted the source, wanted control, wanted the world to remain a playground. 7 gods, each with their own army, and the day 1905 would be the last day, or the first. He left. He vanished into thin air, as if he'd never been there. Only craters in the ground, and grass black with ash, and silence. The system window flashed. Phase 2. The War of the Creators. The 7 gods of the Pantheon have united. Target: the source of the throne. Deadline: Day 1095. 365 days. Good luck. Again. Aiden stood in the square. The city stood. People stood. The source burned with gold. 1 year. 1 year until the finale. 7 gods, each at level 100, with armies, with power that shatters reality, against the city, against 3,000 people, against the blacksmith and the general and the scout and the archer and the demoness, against a man who had played the game 100 times and decided for the first time not to play. Darian approached, stood beside him, was silent, then said he had heard every word, that he hadn't understood everything, but he understood the main point, that Aiden knew this world because he had been here before, many times, and that every time he had destroyed it, and that now he was building it. Aiden nodded. Darian said that was enough, that soldiers don't ask how their commander knows the way. They ask if he's leading them home. And he turned toward the square. He shouted in a voice that had led armies for 20 years. Repair the walls, sharpen the weapons. 1 year until war. Let's get to work. The last year of Crosshold was a big of construction. Not walls, peace. Aiden stopped count the days by numbers. He counted by deeds. A day when Thorn forged the first set armor from stellar metal tempered in the light source. Metal sang under the hammer. Thorn said that the anvil guides his hands. What he is not blacksmith but a guide. What metal itself knows which shape to take. The armor was black with gold veins, light as fabric, strong as a wall. The first set Thorn gave to Darian. The general put on and straightened up like that he stood taller by 10 centimeters. 20 years in the army and 2 years in Crosshold made its theme he was become. Not a general the king's, a general of the city. The day when Serena has returned from reconnaissance and for the first time smiled. She found a group of elves from the News of Leaves, 30 archers. They came themselves. They said that the forest hears source, that do sing at what is sign. Serena didn't believe in signs, but led them. 30 elven archers, each able to hit in the A with 50 meters. Kale met them, and for the first time in my left felt like an in-shooter. The day when Nimra brought the demons. Not horde, a clan. 112 demons from those who did wanted war, who fled from Xeraxis. Women, children, the elderly, and 40 warriors who said that would defend Crosshold if Crosshold accepts them. Families. The city froze. 1,000 people watched at 112 demons at the gate. The mother of the children was standing in first row. She watched at demonic children, little ones, frightened, with little horns that haven't have grown, and with eyes that still had learned to be. She stepped forward. Everyone froze. She approached to the girl, years 5. She stood on her. She looked at vertical pupils. The girl looked at her. The woman held out her hand. The girl took it. The city exhaled. The gates opened. Aiden stood against wall and looked down. Down below, people and demons were along one street. Clumsily, cautiously, but they walked. For the first time in history of world, not in single run of did happen, not in single script, not in a single file. The world created something new. Day when Raven Steel returned. 500 free swords. She came not for money. She came because the fault in the West Russian, because that the sky was getting dark, because that even the mercenaries realized that if the gods destroy Crosshold, then the next will all the rest. Raven stood in front of Aiden and said that she hates the gods, that will fight with them for free. What is personal? Aiden accepted. Army Crosshold. 200 soldiers of the city in divine armor. 500 mercenaries of the Covenant, 500 free swords, 30 elven archers, 40 demonic warriors, 300 militiamen, 1,570 fighters. Darian commanded them all, calmly, confidently, like a man who knows what he's due. Kellen became the captain. A blank face remained, but behind it now was will that held the order when everything around was burning.